Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McKusick. We're here to continue our series of That One Play today. And we've got an interesting one, kind of a play that I'd kind of forgotten about, but was very cool in Ravens history, certainly. And that's Ray Lewis's pick six against the Panthers in 2010. Some cool side stories with this, but here to talk to me about it is Larry. Larry, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you, Ken?
Life's good. Happy to have you on the show. Great to meet new people for starters. We talked a little bit in our production meetings. You're obviously very knowledgeable. I'm going to let you handle the entire setup for the play. Please walk us through, first of all, the setup for the play, and then also why it's important to you.
Yeah, sure. So this play happened during the 2010 season, and the Ravens had just been coming off a last-minute loss in overtime to Atlanta the previous week. They were 6-3 coming into this game. Panthers were 1-8, facing a lot of injuries, including at the quarterback position because they were starting Brian St. Pierre, which is a name that probably, no matter how long you've been watching the NFL, you may not know that name. And up to this point, he only had 5 career passing attempts. So it was a pretty rough game for the Panthers, as you might tell. And to begin the fourth quarter, actually, the Panthers were coming back, I believe it was 20-13.
Mm-hmm.
They had just scored a touchdown, so it was still a little bit of a game, although you never felt like they were really in it. And on the previous drive before this play, Ed Reed had a pick, threw it to Dewan Landry, lateraled it to Dewan Landry. They returned it to the end zone for a touchdown, so obviously very demoralizing. And then on this play, another pick six, which was just unbelievable to see back-to-back pick sixes, not only that, but by 2 legends. So that's why this play was really just significant to me, because this was only my second year of actually watching the Ravens, and it kind of was finally sinking in, like, wow, even though they're somewhat in their older years, I'm watching Ray Lewis and Ed Reed, and these are 2 of the greatest defenders to ever play this game. I'm probably never going to see anything like this at all.
Yeah, it was consecutive plays was really shocking at this point. And people kind of forget exactly where Ray Lewis maybe was in his career. Still playing at a very high level, but 2010 was his next to last really good year. In 2011, he had another good year, still playing at a high level. 2012, he was hurt. And honestly, when he did play, he was bad, including in the playoffs. And I hate to say that about Ray, but he wasn't playing at the full Ray level in either for any part of 2012 when he came back. Ed Reed, on the other hand, came back in the 8th week of the season. I think it was the 8th, maybe it was the 7th week of the season. I think it was that Buffalo game.
Against Buffalo, yes.
And then came back and led the NFL in interceptions.
Yeah, and that I remember even from that Buffalo game, I think he had a forced fumble on one of the earlier drives, and he had an interception later in that game. So it was his first game back, and you could tell that, he was still Ed Reed, obviously. So it was amazing to see, the play against the Panthers that I had mentioned to you. That was the first time I'd actually seen a lateral. I didn't know that was a rule.
Huh.
So
how old are you at the time?
Man, I must have been probably 16, I want to say.
Okay.
Yeah, so I know it was only my second season watching football and really getting into it, and I thought it was illegal. I thought the play was over, like the whistle had blown. I just didn't hear it. Then the next thing you know, Dewan Landry is diving over the pylon for a touchdown. And if I may, leading up to this play, it's kind of a funny story. So if I can level with you here, Ken, my name is actually Karuga.
Okay.
I'm from Kenya, Nairobi, Kenya.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I was born. And so in our culture, we don't use the word grandma. We use the word shosho. So let me just preface this by that. So I was at my shosho's house, my grandma, and this is a very reserved, stoic woman, kind of just sits and observes, doesn't say a lot. And we always watch the game at her house just to give her company. So we're watching the game. She never, ever previously had commented on any games from when my family was there. But we watched the Ed Reed play, pitched it to Dewan, got the touchdown. And kind of were just like, okay, that was great. And then on this play, when Ray did the exact same thing on 1st and 10 of the next drive,
Mm-hmm.
we all were just sitting there in kind of stunned silence. And she just goes, wow. And she never comments on anything at all. So we all kind of just laughed about it. And that kind of just made the play even more special than it already was.
Yeah, way to go, Show. Is she still with us?
Yes, she is, thankfully. Yes.
Terrific. Terrific. Outstanding. And other things, maybe you want to talk a little bit about the aftermath of this play. One thing we talked about at the production meeting is we have a lot of historic plays in this series and a lot of ones where they were pivot points in Ravens history. The Ravens wouldn't be the Ravens without some of these plays even. But this one, not that sort of play in terms of being season deciding.
Yes, not at all. It was, in the grand scheme of things, it's a fairly innocuous play, but just the sequence of events, I think, was what really ingrained it in my head. So obviously, after this play, they went on to close the game out. It wasn't even really much of a game. That was the first time I had seen us kind of win a game handily, really, which was a good feeling. So yeah, in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't much, although as we touched on, just the historical factor of having these two amazing players make these back-to-back plays was insane.
Yeah, very, very cool. I remember being there and thinking we're probably never going to see them make big plays in the same game today, or at least like at this level. There's a couple pick sixes, and almost we didn't. But then in the first game of 2011, all four of the Ravens, what I would call the Mount Rushmore defenders, they had Nada, Reed, Suggs, and Lewis, all were involved in 2+ turnovers in that game, which is just incredible. They knocked the Steelers all over the place 35-7 that day, but they also won the turnover battle 7-0. And when I always talk to younger fans or talk to older fans who want to show their kids who those players were, I always go, show them that game, because that's the one that you see all those great defenders plying their craft at the highest possible level. That was a remarkable game. But this one, in its own right, having Lewis and Reed Reed and Lewis make back-to-back plays like this, just really something special. And you knew it at the time.
Yeah. And
he's kind and he's funny and he's also mustachioed. He solves all your problems by the end of every episode. TV Dad. Everyone loves TV Dad. TV Dad. Unlike a real dad, he never hollers. And he tells you how Progressive can save you lots of dollars.
Listen to your TV Dad. Switch to Progressive and you could save hundreds. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary.
It was, well, to your first point, absolutely. That game was one of my favorite. I will just go back and watch that game randomly just to get a good smile. Just that seeing Haloti Ngata go at Rashard Mendenhall and his eyes were just huge, like, whoa. Unbelievable play. But yes, to your point, like it also made me pay more attention to actually the X's and O's of the game. Because, as I had mentioned, this was young in my football fandom. So a lot of times I was just like, okay, on defense, I'm just going to watch Ray and Ed. On offense, I'll watch Ray Rice. And I was watching Ray that whole play, and he was standing completely still pre-snap. And he already knew, post-snap, he just immediately looked to where, the target was headed, sprinted, beat the receiver to the punch, and got it. I was kind of nervous. I think it was Steve Smith who was running an under route. And Steve had tried to chase him down. And I was kind of nervous that he was going to get run down because Ray was kind of looking back a few times. I think maybe, I guess, wasn't used to that. But, he ran it in and it was fine. But everything about that play was kind of made me pay more attention to the X's and O's. I remember, I think Jarrett Johnson got a free rush to the quarterback, and that's kind of what forced the early throw. So all of those things kind of got the gears turning a little bit on my head of like, hey, let me actually pay attention to what's going on everywhere on the field.
Good memory. That's exactly right. Jarrett Johnson with the quarterback hit on the play. So one of the things I really appreciated about Ray late in his career, especially, and early in his career, Ray did depend some on his athleticism, though honestly was never the incredible speed athlete that other players were. It was always instincts. And if you want a player who plays faster than his 40 time, plays faster than all his combine numbers for that matter, Ray Lewis was the guy, because he knew where it was going, and his love of film study and all the time he put into the game really was special in terms of understanding where he is. And as his physical skills declined, he was still able to get to the point in the route. And something I would complain about always with the late Ravens linebackers of recent years is, we got some tremendous athletes, Kenny Young and even Owasso was a pretty decent athlete, and of course Queen, yeah. But none of them know what's happening behind them in level 2 and 3, and between level 2 and 3, and that's a big coverage responsibility for inside linebackers. And Ray always knew. He understood from route combinations at the line of scrimmage where he was going to be challenged. And Roquan is the first guy that the Ravens have had. Really, CJ did it pretty well too, but Roquan is the first guy since CJ left that really demonstrates those qualities on a very regular basis.
I 100% agree with you, and I have really pushed back on the notion that Roquan and Marcus Williams are the new A and Red, but they're the closest thing that I'm probably going to see. I think you're 100% right. I've never really seen since Ray. Since Ray, I haven't seen someone like Roquan, basically. So it's a blessing that we were able to sign him as well.
Couple great cornerstone contracts, and there's a lot of similarities between those two, and definitely some criticism of the Ravens for paying a lot at what some people would call overvalued positions, or positions that are less important in today's NFL. I think the Ravens have done a really good job of deciding who they're going to play as cornerstone players, and I think these are good choices. So glad to have them both, and really excited to what the next 5 years bring for these two players.
Yes, I think all of Ravensclock is very nervous about where this offseason is going to go, but you can feel secure knowing that this defense is maybe 80% set, probably another starting corner. We'll see what happens with Patrick Queen.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest question on defense right now is what they'll do with Patrick Queen. I think what happens with Chuck Clark is still in the air. I think they've got something that's so good in terms of Hamilton at slot cornerback. They're probably not going to give that up, even though I think he could be even better at playing strong safety, free safety. I think he could be an even better roamer. Looks like a fantastic draft pick in terms of how I would see the thing, but I think they're going to be really, because of the shortage of corners generally and the difficulty in developing them, and generally speaking the age of their cornerback group, they're going to be heavily pressed to draft a corner in round 1, even though the fans will scream if there's no wide receiver taken.
100%. Yeah, I'm bracing for it. I mean, wouldn't even say bracing. I actually want a corner because I'm questioning if we'll get a quality receiver that we want at 22, but 100%. I mean, this defense is set. Like, seeing the way they played basically to close out the whole season, and what do you want to say, the whole second half of the season really. I mean, they look spectacular. So I'll be happy with whatever they do, I think, honestly.
Yeah, very, very excited and look forward. Well, Karuga, wonderful talking to you. I'll call you by your given name then instead of Larry. Yeah. But really appreciate you coming on the show. You're welcome anytime. If you'd like to do another one of these shows, just hit me up. I normally put a 1 month waiting period on doing a second show. But if you have another play on it, it sounds like I'm sure you have some. Would love to hear from you again. Tell folks where they can talk football with you online.
Oh, yes. So my Twitter is at RedXEnthusiast. If you know, you know. You can also just find me at Karuga Koinange. That's my main account, not my burner. And yes, feel free to tweet me. I'm trying to get more into actually interacting and, tweeting my opinions more, because that's something I've always kind of felt nervous about it, even coming on the show. So I'm grateful that you had me. And yes, please, I will definitely be back. I can say that.
All right. Outstanding. Other folks out there, if you'd like to be on an episode and think you have a good play you'd like to talk about, please hit me up, DM on Twitter. That's always open. That's exactly what Karuga did. And he had a play he wanted to talk about and got back to him. The whole process, how much turnaround time? Maybe 2 weeks or less?
Yeah. Well, maybe a week, I would say.
Yeah. So very quick in terms of how quickly I'll get back to you is the point I'm making out there. And Karuga, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Ken. Thanks a lot.
We'll talk to you next time on Film Show.
Alrighty. Take care.